Welcome back to PathMonk Presents. PathMonk is the AI for website conversions. With increasing online competition, over 98% of website visitors don't convert. The ability to successfully show your value proposition and support visitors in their buying journey separates you from the competition online. PathMonk qualifies and converts leads on your website by figuring out where they are in the buying journey and influencing them in key decision moments with relevant micro experiences like case studies, intro videos, and much more. Stay relevant to your visitors and increase conversions by 50% by adding PathMonk to your website in seconds, letting the artificial intelligence do all the work, and increase conversions by 50% while you keep doing marketing as usual. Check us out on pathmonk.com. Hey, everybody, welcome back to PathMonk Presents. Today, we're really excited for our conversation because we've got Ryan Ofman, head of AI research over at Deep Media. Ryan, how you doing today?
Great. Thanks so much for having us, Kevin.
Of course, we're really looking forward to hearing what you guys have to tell us about Deep Media. It's one of the most interesting companies we've had on the podcast recently. But before we dive too far into the nuts and bolts of everything, why don't you give our audience just a little bit of background about what Deep Media is, what you guys do, and yeah, just tell us all about it.
Absolutely. So in 2018, when our founder, Rijal Gupta, saw the first deepfake video, I'm sure a lot of you saw it. It was this video of Jordan Peele on one side and President Obama on the other side. And you could see the perfect matching between what Jordan Peele was saying and how President Obama's mouth was moving. Now, as someone who studied artificial intelligence and machine learning, our CEO knew immediately this kind of tech was going to change the world. And it was quite literally that day that he went about founding Deep Media. And Deep Media has went through a lot of evolutions in the nearly 7 or 8 years that it's been around. But the goal has always been clear. How can we use artificial intelligence, the same technologies that are being used to create this kind of content, as a way to safeguard the digital ecosystem against the potential threats of some of the things that artificial intelligence allows bad actors to do? And how can we stay ahead of those activities using that very same technology?
That's a really interesting idea, and I definitely had seen that same video myself, and yeah, that was kind of like a wow, this is the direction of the future. That's crazy. So I was checking out the website a little bit ahead of time. I know that you guys work with some really interesting departments, industries, a lot of different types of people utilizing the type of technology that you guys have to kind of identify deep fake content online. Maybe you can tell us, like, who are some of the companies or industries or verticals that you're working in, and what are some of the problems that you're solving for them?
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to be good and well behaved about our NDAs, as I have learned to do very, very well. But there are kind of three different categories of companies that we work with who are interested in doing this kind of deepfake detection work for a pretty wide variety of reasons. First, we have government end users. We work a lot with the US government to try to figure out how we can use deepfake detection technology to protect the digital ecosystem a little bit more concretely in terms of getting accurate intelligence, making sure that false intelligence is not spread, and lastly, trying to make sure that any information that is getting sent out by the government has been fact checked and ensure that it is not created using generative AI. The second category of companies is social media platforms, who intentionally or unintentionally have become the main place in which these kinds of misinformation content has been spread. And this is just part of hosting a platform that anyone can post on. And these companies have done a really great job, though, there's obviously more work to be done in terms of using companies like us to try to prevent and at least accurately label the kind of information that is spread on these websites. We're thinking about things like community notes. Instagram, the Meta group, has finally started putting some labels that say if you're posting a piece of AI generated content, you must label it or it is liable to be taken down. Things like that. And the way they can figure that out is through tech solutions like Deep Media's. And lastly, financial institutions, the groups that are starting to see the greatest incidents of deepfake fraud, whether it's calling in as someone fake, asking to access a bank account, or something a little bit less direct but sometimes more malicious, like sending in a deepfake screenshot of yourself for identity verification. There's a lot of these really, really tricky use cases that traditional institutions simply were not prepared for because of the rapid advent of these AI technologies. And so we also assist in those domains in a way that allows us to kind of work with a wide group of people, all aiming to alleviate the negative impacts of some of this technology.
Awesome answers. Really appreciate that input. And I think it's interesting that you guys are working in those three different areas. I want to move on and talk a little bit about the audience that you guys work with, because you've identified some pretty specific industries. But in terms of your audience and in terms of the marketing that you guys are doing over there, how are people finding out about you guys at the moment? Like, are you doing a lot of kind of outbound organic SEO ads? Is it mostly like referral based? Maybe you can tell us like how do most of your customers currently find out about you?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's kind of two main avenues. One that we thought was going to be the real kind of way people found out about us. And then the second, which is really how we've begun to gain traction. The first being showing up at conferences and events to give talks about deepfakes in their various natures and the forms in which they take, the state of deepfake detection efforts, speaking about the work we've done with the government as well as private industry to work to mitigate some of the effects of spread of deepfake based misinformation. And that's been a wonderful way that we've gained exposure. We've been able to talk with people from a wide variety of industries. We've been able to talk to people from a wide variety of backgrounds and teach and inform a little bit about the potential dangers of these technologies, even if they're not happening right now, but what might happen in the next coming years. And the second, and I would say perhaps the biggest way that we've gained traction over the years, is by doing deepfake detection reports. So when a popular deepfake comes out, whether it was Taylor Swift a year ago, whether it was the Mexican president who was photoshopped into a photo with El Chapo, which is a paper that we're putting out about a case study of
Oh,
that exact report quite recently. We put out deepfake detection reports, which analyze this piece of content, go through why we think it might be a deepfake, what our detectors are saying, and why you might need to be on the lookout for something like this. And we post it to all of our socials. We often try to get in touch with the reporters who have originally done this work so that we can keep spreading that information globally. And while we originally did this really as a passion project of saying we have the technology necessary to answer these questions, we might as well put it out to the world. This has become one of the primary ways that people have found out about deep media. From there, they check out our website, they check out our LinkedIn, and I'll talk about the website in a bit. But with a new and exciting technology like this, the website is a really important place that we can begin to have people playing around with this kind of technology, think about its usefulness, and begin to understand why it might be so important now and moving forward.
this is so interesting because every now and then you kind of hear about like these viral deep fake moments, right? Like you mentioned, whether at the beginning, whether it's the Key and Peele Obama thing, or whether it's Taylor Swift, right? Or I didn't even know about this Mexican president photoshopped with El Chapo. That's just crazy. But these things gain so much traction, right? Like so many people are talking about these and analyzing them. And if you guys can kind of get into the viral conversation and be like, hey guys, we've actually analyzed this with technology and we can kind of provide our 2 cents on as to why we think it's fake or not. That is really interesting. Like insert yourself directly into the viral conversation with like a tangible piece of evidence. I think that's a really clever use of marketing material. That's really, really smart. I like that a lot. Okay. Speaking of the website and going over to that, I'm really curious about how you guys utilize the website, whether it be for potential client education or client acquisition, because I would imagine, and maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, I would imagine there isn't like a huge traffic volume of people searching for services like this, right? It's not like people are going online and searching for Nike shoes and there's millions and millions of people every single day searching for that. I would imagine the volume for a service like deep fake detection services or AI is probably relatively low. So maybe you can tell us like what role does the website play in terms of both client acquisition and potential client education?
Totally. And for a service like this, which provides a technology that is quite new, it's quite novel, and there are certainly people in the space doing it, but perhaps none longer than we have. Those two things go hand in hand, which is client acquisition and client education. In large part because a lot of the people who are learning about this are learning about it for the first time. And they might be able to start seeing that the problem already existed, whether or not it's already in their existing workflows or in the way they're transitioning to be able to, use automated tools to process audio, video, image information. They begin to understand through client education whoa, this stuff probably is going to find its way into our potential workflows. And from learning about it, we might need to start talking about how to use a detection solution like this. So you're absolutely right as well that, people aren't usually just super curious about what this term deepfake means and find us that way. We see a lot of traffic through these large scale events, whether you're a big Taylor Swift fan, or whether you're following political discourse very directly and there's a suspected deepfake of President Trump or Vice President Vance. These individual incidents cause huge spikes in interest into this kind of technology. And we've done we think, a great job of creating our website and our service as a way, certainly, of getting clients, but also of being able to educate whoever the person is who wants to learn more about deepfakes. Because at the end of the day, with a problem like this that is so new, so potent, and so ever growing, being able to educate the population that this is indeed a problem and one that needs to be solved is the main way that we get to, well, should I talk to Deep Media about how I can go about solving this problem? And so the website plays a really foundational role. We've tried really hard to include a lot of documentation on our website itself that can help people learn about how this technology works, how they might go about using it in their day-to-day life, or even if they've not, we connect our blog and we connect these deepfake detection reports to our website. So if nothing else, they can just learn about, whoa, this problem is real, this problem is out there, and this is something people are trying to solve.
That's a really interesting answer, and it leads me to want to ask a follow-up question. In terms of the conversions that you guys are actually getting on the website currently, are more of them more like urgent issues where people are trying to deal with a deep fake situation that that are currently in their hands, trying to think like, okay, we've been dealing with a piece of content, we can't tell if it's fake or not, we need a solution now? Or are more of the conversions of people looking to utilize your services more like, hey, we've seen other deep fake content out there and we're looking to be a little bit more proactive and try to get ahead of the problem before it becomes way more common? Like, what is the type of conversion that you're seeing a little bit more frequently right now?
It's a great question, and it goes to kind of two parts. I'll talk about the earthquake, and then I'll talk about the aftershock. The
Okay.
earthquake, which is the really main way that we absolutely do see people coming in, which is we've had a high-profile deepfake, whether it's an account executive at this company, whether it's something that is going to affect the stock in some way or another, affect client trust or client growth. We need you to help us deal with this specific deepfake. It absolutely happens. And once we can solve that problem effectively, those often can get parlayed into more long-term contracts. Oh, well, it's happened to us once. Is it going to keep happening to us? We better keep Deep Media on the team in some manner and, implement their technology such that the next time this happens, we can deal with it within 3 hours rather than deal with it within 3 days. That's the earthquake. And that is very much the big way that we find a lot of these technologies. But with the really high profile deepfakes, whether it's the Binance CEO who hopped on a Zoom call and turns out it was just some random guy in a deepfake voice of the Binance CEO trying to convince them to move a bunch of money around. Certainly, we might hear from Binance, and that would be the main effect. But the aftershocks, which are very real, is every other similar company going, uh-oh, if it happened to them, I wonder if it can happen to me. So we very much also do see that effect of after a super high profile deepfake, we get a lot of traffic of people saying, if this happened to me, what would you be able to do about it? And that's where we get a lot of that information as well. We can begin doing trials and preventative strategies, which, as much as we love to help deal with the problem as it happens, if you can go about creating an infrastructure that allows for you to prevent the spread of this misinformation before it happens, man, does it make our life easier, and it certainly makes their life easier as well. So it's a
Yeah.
combination of both.
Yeah, to have you guys already in there sounds like a really favorable situation as opposed to, geez, this just happened out of the blue. What do we do? All of a sudden, we have to start looking for a solution for this. On the other hand, oh, we've got a relationship with Deep Media already. Just give the guy a call. Let's start working on figuring out if this is real or not.
Exactly.
Wow, it feels so futuristic, but also like it's happening now. This is such an interesting topic for me. I really am interested. Okay, but I want to move on to a new section of the conversation. It's going to be a little bit less focused on deep media and a little bit more focused on Ryan, the marketing professional, also the AI head of research over there, but the man of many hats. So, in your opinion, when it comes to websites and websites that get a lot of conversions, what are the things that work to get good conversions on a website? Like, are there any sort of tools or tips or methods that you might recommend to people out there that are looking to kind of like boost the amount of conversions they're currently getting on their website?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll give the answer in two parts. The first part, what about AI services? How do you communicate AI services in a way that feels accessible? Because as much as this technology is becoming a part of our everyday life, a lot of the verbiage and the narrative surrounding these AI technologies can seem so complicated and nebulous. Like, what's the point of me reading this? I won't understand it. And that simply is not the case. So I find it fundamentally important, especially when talking about artificial intelligence subjects, to try to express them in a more communicative way. Because these things are not rocket science at the end of the day. Maybe building them is, but explaining how these networks do the kind of problem solvings that humans do so well and humans have been doing for thousands of years is actually oftentimes a lot simpler than people think. So I often think that it's great to talk about all the tech you do. It's amazing to talk about the variational autoencoders that you use in your AI detection models. But it's also important to say, hey, an AI detection model learns just the way a human learns. It gets thousands of examples and hundreds of thousands of repetitions, and it gets really good at a task, like detecting deepfakes. So I think, especially on the domain of explaining AI products, it's about making it real. It's about taking this seemingly abstract and nebulous concept and explaining it in a much more human way. And that's why our detection reports are so important, because you can read that and you can say, I understand what this is doing and I understand how this works, even if you've never had exposure to AI in the past. Second, I really think that live demonstrations and tech tools are so important for making a website approachable and easily navigatable. Throw a demo on there where you can click a couple buttons, where you can upload a piece of content yourself. You can begin to understand how this process works on an intimate and personal level rather than saying, okay, well, this cool service exists. I wonder, maybe I should pass it off to our tech guy to figure out how it works. Because that is not the world that AI is presenting. It is presenting a world where anyone can interface with this incredibly powerful technology. So, creating explainable AI, things that help make this stuff clear and well documented and well defined, as well as giving people the tools to kind of explore and expand on these different topics themselves, are both fundamentally important. And then the second part of that answer, which is generally why are these websites so important, which is it gives people an opportunity to learn about all the different things that one does. That's why it's so important for us to, on our website, point to our blogs or point to speeches we've given or presentations we've given that people can watch. And these educational resources, as much as they're very important for, informing people about what we do, they're also just interesting. And so the attempt to make our website a genuinely interesting place where someone who might not have a rapid or urgent need for deepfake detection might still get lost in trying to explore, what is this all about? What is this talk they gave? What is this blog post they wrote about that movie that might have used AI generated posters? I remember seeing that. And they can just explore and learn of their own volition rather than trying to force them to learn exactly what we might want them to learn. And so our website plays such an important role in client acquisition, and it does so not separate from the educational aspect that our website provides.
I would agree with both of those parts very strongly. Number one, obviously, PathMonk being an AI tool for website conversions. Like, yeah, when you say like AI isn't as complicated as one might think it is, that's totally 100% true. And number two, when you talk about providing content that's actually interesting, that people actually want to consume and read and absorb into their knowledge base, 100% agree. I had someone on the podcast recently as well who said They sell their products not to, the marketing managers or not to the CEOs or whatever, but directly to the engineers who the tool is built for. All of the resources that they have on their website is very much like at a high level engineering type, we'll say knowledge level, right? And it's something that goes well over my head. But they said, if it's not for you, if you don't understand it, you're probably not the right person that we're looking to sell to in the first place anyway, right? So by having really interesting content that is directly and purposefully created for the people that you're looking to actually engage with, yeah, I totally agree. Having really interesting content that's built for those people is definitely going to get more conversions. Okay, moving on to the next conversation, or sorry, moving on to the next question. I wanted to focus a little bit on what your day-to-day work day looks like. Like, what are some of the typical tasks that you're handling on a day-to-day basis? And maybe there's something that you've been doing a little bit more lately that you've been working on. Like, why don't you fill us in on what a pretty average day looks like for Ryan?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of my favorite things about working for a company like Deep Media is that I get to wear many hats. Let's say I start the day with a little bit of engineering, a little bit of programming, whether that's, setting up a new AI model to train on my machine while I do the rest of my daily work, or whether that's just going through our website and making sure that, some updates came through and look great, or, refining our documentation a little bit. Let's call that the first part of my day. The second part of my day I would call much more marketing focused. Now, there's a couple lanes with which we do that. One is checking in with our existing clients. Hey, how is our detection working for you? Are there features that you feel are missing? What is the biggest hurdle that you're having right now in terms of using our technology to the fullest extent that it can? And we get really, really great feedback just from checking in with our existing clients with questions like that. And the third, and I would say this is very much the answer to the what have we been doing lately question, is we've been working very, very directly with academics in the deepfake detection field. Now, academics are doing really incredible and important work in understanding in a very thorough and robust manner not only does this technology work, deepfake detection, how does it work? What are its limitations? And very importantly, and this is a conversation that is ongoing and one that we are very actively a part of, how can we ensure that this technology works in a fair and equitable manner? As with all AI models, the potential for bias and integrating bias into these data sets that then go about training these AI models is a really big problem. And they can happen intentionally and they can so often happen unintentionally. So we're working with some academics right now to try to begin to understand the landscape of fairness in these AI detection models. If we're analyzing facial data, are we doing it accurately across different skin tones? Are we doing it accurately across different genders? Are we doing this in a way that, respects and keeps in mind the very diverse landscape of the world we live in and ensures that our technology works regardless of the conditions? So that work with academics has been such an important piece of what we've been doing lately because we already have, we think, really great AI detection. And these deepfake detectors that we've built out have been really, really powerful. The question now is how can we make sure they're equitable? How can we make sure they're scalable? And how can we make sure they're future proof? And the answer to that is very long and very complicated. And it
I'm sure.
involves
I'm sure.
constantly getting more data and constantly retraining your models. But that's work that we've really been able to learn from our academic partners. And then the last part of my day, I've finished all the sales demos, I've finished all the marketing resources, new and exciting pieces of technology. D-Media has some really cool stuff coming down the line. Whether it's some new AI models for age detection, race and gender identification to try to make those data sets more equitable, or some larger kind of media model type capabilities. D-Media's, as an engineering focused company, is always working on something cool and something next. And so that would be the last part of our day. As our models are training and as our leads are kind of accumulating, the last part of our day is what originally brought me to this kind of company, which is working on the next cool tech of the future.
Yeah, having some fun with it for sure. That's a really busy sounding day, and it sounds like you're doing a really great job at it. I
This is only
wanted
my second coffee. It's not too bad.
it's still early in the day. We got time for two or three more. Okay, next question. I want to talk a little bit about where you kind of go to learn and grow and kind of stay up to date with what's going on out there, right? I know all of us are always looking to kind of improve upon ourselves, but where do you personally go to kind of, consume content that's meant to make you a better AI engineer or a better marketing manager or a better sales manager? Where do you go to kind of find that type of information?
I'm going to give two answers that both age myself and put myself into the category of, engineer. First, YouTube. I just love following cool creators who do awesome AI work, whether it's, directly in the deepfake detection field or more often than not, just talking about new cool concepts, breaking down the latest large language model into an accessible way. I'm also not trying to, have my brain melted by the most complicated technical explanation of new technology. I really value the people who are effective communicators in the space, of which there are many. In the second place is GitHub. And this is where I'm, revealing my engineering hat a little bit. But especially in the field of deepfake generation, which goes hand in hand with deepfake detection, the kind of work that people are doing and putting readily available on places like GitHub is really quite amazing and quite inspiring. Now, it can be easy to say, well, these technologies can be abused. They shouldn't be able to be allowed on GitHub for free. And I certainly agree with components of that arguments. That being said, to be able to learn about the new ways that people are thinking about generative AI and new content and are willing to put this information, oftentimes this actual code and these data sets available for free on the internet, does a lot for the ability to learn about these different technologies as they play a role in real life. And then lastly, I love just setting some Google alerts, whether it's for deepfake detection or whether it's for generative AI more generally. The kind of articles you get from both, independent journalists and also the updates that some of these companies can provide are really, really informative and help me, though you might need to take them with a grain of salt, they help me stay in the loop a little bit more directly.
I would totally agree. Those larger companies definitely do have a little bit of an agenda that they need to push. So yeah, you always with that grain of salt. But I
Yes,
couldn't
important to keep
agree.
that in mind.
I couldn't agree more with the YouTube idea, right? Number one, you have really effective communicators there. But number two, sometimes just for people that aren't really like great, they always say people can, what is it, retain information differently. Some are like visual learners, or what is the tangible learners, like doing things, and some can learn just from reading. I'm more of the visual myself. So yeah, go on YouTube, watch a video of how to do this, how to do that, how is this being built, how is that being created. Yeah, it's become such a go-to content
Just
place for me as well.
the one thing I'll say on that is I hear a lot of times, oh, well, I'm this kind of learner. And that means it's probably not, I'm not really built for learning about AI or coding or something like that. And maybe that was true 20 years ago. But we are finally at a point where there are so many different kinds of resources to learn about this technology. Whether it's YouTube, whether you're a hands-on person and want to pull down a GitHub repo and just, run a few lines of code and all of a sudden you have an amazing model running or an amazing model training. There are so many avenues now to learn and explore this new technology. So if you're one of those people who think, well, I'm this kind of learner and therefore I'm not well suited to learn about this kind of stuff, I couldn't disagree more.
Nice, nice. I like that. Okay, we're moving on to the final section of the conversation. It's a little bit of a rapid fire round where we're looking for kind of like short, crisp, concise answers, but at the same time, it's definitely filled with more, how do I say, playful, thought-provoking type questions. It's not really focused on work or your personal. It's just going to be a little bit more thought-provoking. So, number one, to get you started with a nice, easy one, what's the last book that you read?
The Alignment Problem, Brian Christian, fantastic book that I think is very accessible about machine learning. What is the difference between these AI models and the values of human beings? How do they interrelate? How must they interrelate? And how should we think about it moving forward? Great book about AI. You do not need to be an expert. You should give it a shot.
I'll definitely add it to my list. The next one. If there were no boundaries in technology, and I mean like, snap your finger, anything is possible type stuff, what would be the one thing that you would want to have fixed for your role as more specifically a marketer today?
Yeah. Remove translation barriers. We're very close. We have technologies, some are related to this generative AI, that can hear your voice and speak it perfectly in another language. The problem is we're not quite there on the output perspective on building these pieces of technologies. If we could remove this language barrier, then to be able to tell, the people in India who are dealing with big deepfake problems, specifically in their government, hey, let's work together with no barrier and get this working. The people in Singapore who have similarly dealt with large amounts of deepfake misinformation, hey, there is no barrier here, let's work together. The people in Japan who have similarly seen the prime minister deepfaked a number of times. Let's do this together. If we could remove that language barrier, and I think it's closer than a lot of people think, my job as a marketer would get a lot easier.
I would totally agree. There are so many places where doing that extra, like I would agree, we're so close. And if we talk about like American football, like we're at like the 5 yard line, right? Like we're so
Yes.
close to a touchdown. I think about things like one of the most popular apps in the world, WhatsApp, right? So that people all around the world can communicate through this app. How does it not have like a translation option yet? Or like one of the most popular functions of that is leaving a voice note, right? But could you leave a voice note and then it just appears in the language of the person that you're actually sending it to, right? This should be so easy. In terms of applying it to deep fake type technology, like you said, that would be amazing for your role. But I could also see your answer applying to just, the regular population.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving on. If there was one repetitive task that you could automate out of like, all, I'm sure you have a lot of different tasks that you're handling. We already heard what a typical day looks like for Ryan, so I'm sure there's a lot of them. What would be that one thing that you would want to have automated?
Calendar management. Another thing that we are incredibly close on, but the integration with the primary calendar applications, whether it be Google Calendars or Microsoft Outlooks, they're being gatekept a little bit by these technologies who they are worried about letting people integrate into their different calendar apps because they want to be able to be the ones who put out the AI that can integrate. And I totally understand where they're coming from. That being said, we have the technology necessary. We have competent and sophisticated large language models that, if you told them about your day, could perfectly organize your calendar. And we're just missing some conversation that allows that to happen. And when that happens, everyone's life, the engineer, the marketer, the recruiter, is going to get a whole lot easier.
Yeah. So it's not just my work calendar in one place, but like everything that I have for like, eat at this time and my diet type calendar and
Yes,
my exercise
absolutely.
calendar and
When does
maybe
it
I
make
have,
sense to work out today? When does it make
yeah.
sense to go to sleep, already knowing when I have tomorrow? These models are amazing at that kind of problem solving and
Yeah, bring it all
organization.
together. Bring it all together. It doesn't need to be gate kept and held separately. Let's bring it all together, people.
Yes.
Okay, and for the last one, what is one piece of advice that you would give yourself if you were to restart your journey, specifically as a marketer today?
There is nothing stopping you from reaching out to the person that 5 years ago Ryan would have thought, why would they listen to you? You have a valuable and unique insight. You never know what the things that that person does or doesn't know about that you know about. Experience is important, but it's also not the defining factor. You have important and reasonable and exciting insights about fields just by the virtue of the way that you interacted with them in the beginning. Intimidation is a bad way to get new leads. Reach out to that head of a company that you think is so much bigger than yours. Reach out to that academic that you think would never want to listen to what you have to say. Humans are very cool and they're very willing to listen to new and interesting perspectives. And keep that in mind.
I think that's really, really insightful. Ryan, thank you so much for joining today. We really enjoyed having you on the show. I think the technology you guys are working with is really unique, and I think a lot of people out there will probably be hearing a lot more about you guys soon. But before we get going, why don't you tell our audience one more time, tell us about Deep Media and how they can find you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kevin. This has been awesome. You can find us at deepmedia.ai. Also, check us out on LinkedIn. Check us out on Instagram. We're working on our socials and they're constantly being updated with cool and exciting stuff. Next time there's a deepfake, Google it and then Deep Media. We probably put out a deepfake detection report on it. And it's probably another good way where you could hopefully get a little bit of insight when your friend comes up to you and says, "Did you see that deepfake?" You say, "Oh, yeah, it's fake. I saw the report on it."
That would be awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining today, Ryan. We really look forward to chatting with you again in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Kevin.